All right, thanks guys. Well, I'm honored to be here with everybody today, and I'm really psyched that we've got a great crew here from a lot of the different ski areas around in the Northwest to help answer some questions and clarify some of the information on uphill travel policies and backcountry access policies that we've got. So what I did was we got in touch with all the different ski area representatives, and the way we're going to line this out is we've given each snow safety director or ski patrol director about 5 minutes to put together a little bit of a presentation that outlines their uphill travel policies within the ski area and backcountry access policies to get out from the ski area or near the ski area. So with us today is Peter Dale, ski patrol director at Crystal Mountain. We've got Nick Burks from Mount Hood Meadows. He's a snow safety supervisor. We've got Bram Thrift from the Summit at Snoqualmie, snow safety director. We've got Angela Seidling from Stevens Pass, ski patrol director. Whew. We've got Andy Sellafield from Mount Baker Ski Area, the Pro Patrol and Mountain Education Center. Josh from Mission Ridge couldn't be with us here today, but we do have a little bit of information from him. And Sherry's going to be sharing that for us. We've also got Conrad, what's your last name? Conrad Wharton from the Cascade Backcountry Alliance with us here today, who's going to be a little bit acting as the interface between some of the ski areas and backcountry enthusiasts out here. So some of the questions that we ask these folks are, describe your uphill travel policy within the ski area. Is the ski area open to uphill travel inbounds? Are there specific times when they're open? Are there designated uphill routes? And what procedures need to be followed on uphill travel? Describe your policy on backcountry access and ingress to or from the ski area. How and where can the public access the backcountry from inside the ski area? Is it always open? Is it always closed? Are there specific times when it's open? How can we find out? So there's a lot of problems associated with this, obviously. Some of the common themes that came across when I was speaking to everybody getting this panel together are uphill skier avoidance and just increased backcountry use in general. Increased uphill use in general, increased downhill skier use in general, increased parking, major parking problems all over the place. And then some other dangers that we may not all know about, such as winch cat dangers and avalanche control dangers. So to start it off, uphill skiing in a downhill ski area, you've got these guys on the left facing these guys on the right, and is that really a good idea? So a couple of things associated with that. So you're skiing uphill and you're trying to avoid people that can't even avoid a standing still object, let alone a moving skier. Is that really a good idea? So that's one of them.
1067 at this time on Beaver Creek Mountain. 4 winch cats will be working. 1 on Upper Latigo. 3 winch cats will be working the Golden Eagle Birds of Prey downhill course. All of these areas are closed. Beaver Creek personnel, be advised and stay clear of this area. Thank you.
So winch cats, these things are very dangerous, very real, and they're things that, like, when the ski areas are operating winch cat, the cable is under high tension. They can go long distances between the anchor and the cat. And if there were ever to be a skier skiing through that cable, the cable can skip 10 to 15, 20 feet when the cat moves left to right, long distance downhill. It's not a good thing. So they have those, when those cats go out, the area is closed and you don't want to be anywhere near those things. Avalanche control. So what is an NSAW panel without a little bit of avalanche footage? The main things here, this is a highway, courtesy of the Ministry of Transportation in Kootenai Pass. But that road down below, it could be a cat track, it could be a skin track that goes underneath, it could be even outside of the boundary of a ski area, is the point. And with avalanche control, there's different means of control work. There's explosive work, both hand charged and artillery fired from up to a few miles away. So as backcountry skiers and uphill enthusiasts, we want to make sure we're not in the wrong place at the wrong time. We don't want to have to hold up this whole show of avalanche control work at the ski area just because if we're anywhere near there. We don't want that problem to arise. We could have ski cutters from above, a little bit less obvious. We might not hear that in that case. So there's lots of potential issues that can arise, and I think the point here today is just to get this information out there, and we want to keep our uphill travel access open as much as possible. And so the more we can self-police each other, the better we're all off. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Peter from Crystal Mountain.
Do I use this?
Yeah.
Well, I want to. Well, first off, I want to thank NWAC for putting this panel on. You know, in the last 4 or 5 years, as I'm sure y'all have noticed, we've seen a pretty decent uptick in the number of folks traveling in the backcountry, touring in the backcountry, and traveling uphill in our ski areas. And you know, we're grappling to struggling to figure out a way to, you know, work with all this increased usage of uphill travel and still kind of maintain our daily operations of having, you know, skiing guests traveling downhill. So opportunities like this to reach out are really appreciated. So 4 or 5 years ago, you know, we noticed we have to, at Crystal, we had a pretty good uptick in uphill travel, and we needed to adjust and kind of rethink our uphill travel policy. And it's gone through a few iterations since. A couple seasons ago, we've landed on what we're currently working with right now. And so just to give you guys a real brief overview of what it is, I kind of break it out into a few different things. The first is we've got a flashing light system in the base area. And so we have a couple different lights in the base area near signs with this information on it, indicating whether or not uphill travel is allowed. And basically when the lights are flashing, uphill travel is not allowed. And when the lights are turned off, then uphill travel is allowed. When uphill travel is allowed, we are now asking all uphill travelers to check in with Ski Patrol dispatch, which is located near the bottom of the gondola, to determine which travel routes are permitted for that day. As Matt was mentioning earlier, we've got a lot of downhill traffic, winch cats that can be operating during daylight hours, and avalanche control work that can be going on during daylight hours while we're open to the skiing public. So we may adjust what routes we're having folks travel uphill on any given day depending on what hazards we perceive there are. So that's the first big one, is the flashing lights. New this year for us, if you're familiar with Crystal, we also have located in the base area and around the mountain some trail maps with lists of lifts on them, and then a lift status indicator light on those trail maps. You know, it'll say this lift is green as in open or red as in closed, and we've added uphill travel to those this year as well. So there'll be numerous areas around the ski area where you can physically look at the status of uphill travel and whether or not it's allowed or not at that given time. And we're also aiming to get it onto our website in a live fashion as well. So, you know, on the website you can look up and see if whatever lift is open for that day. We're aiming to have an uphill travel status bar on our website as well. So that's the first big one. And then when it is allowed, we want everybody to check in. We've been informing folks of what routes are approved for the day. And we've been giving folks a little colored ribbon so that they can tie under their ski pole or whatever. And then they won't be stopped continually while they're traveling uphill within our ski area because employees going by will quickly notice, oh, this that this traveler has been checked in and is in the right area of the ski area. So those are the biggies. We also have a number of permanent closures within our ski area. Those are permanent closures to downhill skier traffic. That also applies to uphill skier traffic. So those are still off limits, and those closures haven't changed. There's 3 main ones. And then we also ask folks who are traveling uphill to stay to the sides of the runs and try to avoid other skiers. As you guys all know, ski areas on weekends can be busy places. So we ask folks to travel on the sides of the runs to try to reduce the chances of colliding with downhill traffic, or downhill traffic colliding with you. Something also that we started doing last year was partnering with the Cascade Backcountry Alliance, and they are far more tech savvy than us, and we're able to create an online, and I actually maybe should have Conrad explain exactly how it was done, because all I know is it's on the computer and it's on the internet. They were able to create an online, on a Google map online, an overlay of what areas within our ski area uphill travel is allowed and what areas it's not allowed. And so on this, it's all the red areas, we don't ever allow it, and the yellow areas are areas that we would allow uphill travel depending on the day. Again, we ask that folks check in to figure out which runs we're allowing it on any given day. And also on the Cascade Backcountry Alliance's website, they have a link to this, but they also, on this, when you go to this link, you can download a GPX file that will overlay on your Gaia or whatever GPS app you're using on your phone, so that you can look and see where you are, where the blue dot is on your phone, and determine whether you're in an approved uphill travel zone or not. And the place this really becomes important, and the spot that we've made probably the biggest change in the last couple years, and is probably the most confusing, is in our South Back territory. So our South Back area is a part of the ski area that often gets open later, and what does that mean? Oh, we're done.
Out of time.
Oh, all right, well, South Back, we don't allow uphill travel in South Back at any time because it's hard for us to control ingress and egress out of there. So we ask that folks stay in Silver Basin only and not in South Back, and that is an imaginary line out there in the snow. So here is a map highlighting it, and it's on that Cascade Backcountry Alliance website as well. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Peter. We're going to turn it over to Nick from Mount Hood Meadows.
Mount Hood Meadows has a closed boundary policy and does not allow uphill traffic within the ski area boundary. The policy is detailed exhaustively on the Ski Hood website under the Mountain tab, and then Safety, if you would like to read further. I'll try to explain some of the finer points here. All right. So we do allow backcountry users to park in the parking lots and access the backcountry. To do that, you can park in our main parking lot, which is on this side of the screen, and quickly skin up the side of a groomed run to where that red line is that says exit underneath it. That is the only time you'll be skinning up a run where downhill traffic is moving on the mountain, and you quickly exit the boundary and then proceed uphill. On the other side of the ski area, things get a bit more interesting. There is a cat track with 13 snow bridges that are built to allow for downhill ski travel. We do allow backcountry travelers to use that cat track to access the backcountry. Over there you will see a red line and then the word sign underneath it. There is a sign there that is open and closed. The sign is closed during active avalanche mitigation or during periods of high hazard. After avalanche mitigation is complete for the day or during periods of low hazard, we open that sign, and then backcountry travelers are allowed to travel further up to where that next red line is that says exit. There is some downhill ski traffic on that. It is very slow. You're often skating. Conflicts are not usually an issue there. The ski area boundary does extend up to almost 9,000 feet. You can see the red and black dotted line all the way around it. There is no chairlift to the top of our permit area, and that terrain is hiked to based on conditions. That does create some issues during periods of high pressure when people are climbing up to near the summit of Mount Hood and skiing back down. It's a large alpine bowl. It's very inviting to ski. We do ask that backcountry travelers do not enter closed terrain. They are allowed to skin up out of bounds and then enter open terrain. If you happen to be there and want to enter open terrain, you will know it's open because there will be downhill ski traffic on it. We do have an active avalanche artillery program and do fire a howitzer up into the alpine zone pictured on the map. That information about when avalanche artillery use is in progress is also available on the website. It's most often done during storms, so it shouldn't impact any alpine missions you have planned, but I do encourage you to check that. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So here's Bram.
Okay, so I'm Bram. I'm from the Summit at Snoqualmie. Our uphill travel and all of our other policies are actually on our website, so if you're curious, from our homepage, scroll down to the bottom, policies, and select whichever one you want, uphill travel, back bowls, a number of others. I'm going to try and go quick because I want to focus mostly on Alpental and the Up Valley traffic. So as a general rule, never duck ropes or cross a rope line. Terrain behind ropes, if it is open to the public, will be accessed by a gate. Permanently closed areas are on our trail map. You're responsible to know locations of closures, be it permanently closed or daily seasonal type closures. Rules of use now specific. We are 4 different areas, and we kind of have some different policies depending on which area you're at. West, Central, East, or Snoqualmie, Ski Acres, Hyack, if you're old school. Basically, besides areas that are marked as closed or roped off, you may enter or leave the ski area at any place that you want. Lots of people do that over at Hyack, Silver Fir to get to Mount Catherine and some of the areas beyond. Uphill travel is allowed 24/7 at those 3 areas, whether or not we're open, closed, early season, end of season, after the season, what have you. Please stay off chairlifts and out of buildings facilities if we are closed. And then it's kind of been touched on, but grooming and over snow vehicles, please stay away. Winch operations, Matt kind of touched on, that is our biggest concern. We'll see, or you will see, some maybe increased signage this year when we have winch operations going on. We've had kind of the most conflicts at Hyack. Just because of the nature of our ski areas and the multiple access points, it's really hard to sign all of them. But yet we don't really want to take that opportunity for you guys. I know lots of people come up after work, those kinds of things, want to bust out a few laps for exercise. So winch operations, if you see a cat, basically just stay away. I mean, we don't want anything bad to happen, and you don't want to be the one that kind of makes us reevaluate this policy and maybe have to change it. So kind of cruise through that stuff. Like I said, if you want a bit more detail, please look at the Summit website. So for Alpental specifically, because that's kind of where most of the nitty-gritty goes on. During the operating season, Alpental is only open to uphill travel if the ski area is open to guests. I know it's a little bit strange, but that basically means if we're closed, if it's in the morning, if it's at night, if it's a Monday, we're closed, limited schedule operations, no uphill travel is allowed. So if you want to go uphill, we have to be open to the public, and you need to make contact with patrol first, and then we'll try and come up with a route that will fit our operations, what's going on today, conditions, and hopefully your uphill travel goals. Operating season, you might ask, what's that? Well, it basically kind of starts when there's enough snow for us to begin our setup activities, control work, those kinds of things. Generally runs through the end of season and kind of tear down once we kind of abandon the hill. Then we kind of turn it back loose for you guys to treat it like the rest of the backcountry and get wild and crazy, do whatever you wish. We try and communicate that status on our website, social media, turns all year, and then signs around the base area. So, I got the 2-minute warning. So anyway, I kind of wanted to talk a bit specifically about up valley travel. They talked about it in an earlier discussion. Lot 4, the upper lot. This is a mock-up for a sign that you're going to see coming here this season. Our biggest conflict is kind of in the upper lot, you can see the green and red lines. That's our back bowls permitted terrain, and we want everybody to stay out of that terrain. If you're wanting to access the upper basin, Chair Peak, Source Lake, the Tooth, Great Scott, all those things, we ask that you stay right. When you get to the geographic feature known as Trash Can, we'll have signs there and more to come. Please turn right and travel along the valley bottom. That red line that moves into the kind of blue shaded area has been the site of numerous avalanche incidences over the years, including a number of fatalities. It's also the run-out zones for a number of our runs/avalanche paths. So that's kind of our biggest kind of conflict area, and what we're really focusing on this year moving forward is trying to provide an avenue for uphill travel with folks, but letting you know where our boundaries are and to stay out of that. If you want to travel on the back bowls, please access that terrain when it's open from the 2 gates, the Nash Gate and the Elevator Gate, which are accessed through the developed ski area. So, and you know, really what it kind of boils down to is, you know, our goal is to offer as much terrain as we can to both our guests and the greater public. And, you know, in the end, we have the responsibility to manage this terrain. And at a place like Alpental and some of these other places where you have these additional hazards, the way for us to manage that terrain is also to manage access. So it allows us to do our jobs and not endanger our staff, our guests, or the greater public. So thanks for your cooperation in the past. Appreciate your cooperation in the future, and safe travels. Have a good season.
Thanks, Bram. That new access route is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and
It should really help.
yeah, there'll be more to come. We're kind of fleshing that out, so details follow. Thank you.
So Angela from Stevens Pass.
Okay, well, in putting this together, pictures were of like boundary signs and a blinky light and trail maps, and so I needed a little inspiration. And this photo was taken actually from, I think, from John Scurlock's Plane by Dan Hilden. So there you have it, Stevens Pass, for this tiny little spot in a much bigger area filled with mountains, all accessible for skiing. Stevens Pass, we allow uphill travel in our ski area. Here's the policy on the website for all the world to see. And we allow uphill traffic in the operating area when we're not doing avalanche control and when there are no winch operations going on. And an easy way to find out is by looking at our blinky light, which is that yellow sign. I took this a few weeks ago. We were still in bike park mode. It's beautiful, sunny, like 70 degrees out. That's the top of the rope toe. If you're looking at the ski area at Cowboy Mountain, it's just to the left of the rope toe. So if that light is blinking, we do not allow uphill traffic. That light is turned on when we're doing avalanche control or if there's any winching going on the hill. If that light is turned off, we do allow uphill travel. We still ask that you check in with patrol to make sure that there aren't any specific restrictions for that day. For us, the tricky time of year is early on in the season when we have part of the mountain open, but not the entire mountain. And for those of you that are familiar with Stevens, this, for early season for us, we typically open the front side prior to opening the back side. So the way that we deal with this is our operating boundary is literally the terrain that is open to our guests. So our operating boundary might just be part of the front side of the mountain, and the back side of Stevens Pass is out of our ski area boundary for the time being. The way that we signify that is with boundary signs. And let's see here. So we have these stop ski area boundary signs, and early on in the season, we'll place those literally where we're saying this is the edge of our operating boundary. And you're allowed to go beyond the boundary. We do have common exit points during the bulk of the season, and that's where you'll see that big red "read this" sign. So we have an open boundary policy. You can exit our ski area boundary and go to the backcountry. It is unmitigated terrain. It's the backcountry. Those common exit points all have that big red "read this" sign to make sure that you understand you're leaving the ski area boundary. And we have those at the top of Cowboy Mountain, the top of the Skyline Chair for Grace Lakes, the top of Big Chief Mountain, and on the back side, a couple of other common exit points are at Gemini Pass and down on the Outer Limits Road. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. This one is showing our entire operational boundary. So when we're open, the 2-minute sign, when we're in full operations, that is our operating boundary. And this is the boundary that changes when we don't have enough snow to be in full operations. Sometimes that operating boundary changes depending on conditions, and we do sometimes close parts of our operating boundary based on avalanche conditions or if there's a rescue going on. Same thing with access to the backcountry. We do not close access to the backcountry because of avalanche hazard. Okay, the backcountry is the backcountry. We're not trying to keep people from it. We may close a boundary if we have a rescue going on or if there's avalanche hazard that can potentially affect our inbounds terrain. This is really what we all want to be doing out there. I guess one other important thing to remember with Stevens during the early part of the season, and this goes for the entire season, we don't allow dogs in the operating ski area, and we don't allow dogs in the operating ski area for you to get to the non-operating area either. So no dogs allowed within our ski area.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. We got Andy from Mount Baker. Other button. There we go.
Okay, you're going to find things a lot simpler at Mount Baker here. We don't have any flashing lights or files inside the computer detailing our program, anything like that. By the most simple rule, the main thing I want you guys to know is that we don't want uphill traffic in the ski area during avalanche control. How do you know that? At our main access points in the ski area, which typically is just the blueberry boundary out of the Heather Meadows parking lot. It's signed at both access points there, and then we'll draw a ribbon across the road when we're doing avalanche control. The only other spots that we really have people trying to get into the ski area during avalanche control are at the Water Tower Road, which is the hike-in for the bottom of Chair 5 and 6, and at the bottom of Chair 7, if we're doing avalanche control there. So it's pretty easy to see what's going on there, and you'll also see or hear the bombs going off there. And we just ask that people don't access any portion of the ski area during that. The only typical place where people try to go into the ski area where they might be interfering with downhill traffic is, again, along the blueberry boundary there. We do allow people to travel uphill in that section. The avalanche control in progress signs are flip signs, and we basically flip them over the other way, and it just asks everyone to stay to the right. Now, occasionally it'll be a good powder day. You're up there early. We're still doing avalanche control, and you see bombs going off. The way typical backcountry users get around this is they just go just outside of our rope line there, and a skin track gets put in, and people are able to travel up towards Artist Point. This Blueberry Cat Track is the main route up to Artist Point, which is a real popular backcountry area, and I believe it's in a few snowshoeing books too, detailing where to go there. So it's pretty simple. The only other places that people try to get in are again at the Chair 5 Water Tower Road and Chair 1's mid-station, and occasionally the bottom of Chair 3 over here where 3 and 2 come together. That's not really backcountry travel or access points. Those are just people trying to get into the ski area to get a jump on the chairlifts to hike in. We don't allow that anymore. If you come into mid-station early before we're open, we're probably going to ask you to leave. If we're doing avalanche control, then you're probably going to get kicked off the hill for the day because you've come into a closed area. So then the one other point we have is Chair 8. Occasionally people will like to travel out the cross-country road there and then up Chair 8 to access the higher up points there if they're not buying lift tickets at all. But so far it hasn't been a problem. People just keep to the sides of the trail there, and we don't really have any issues. Dogs, obviously not inside the ski area, although people do tend to take dogs up the Blueberry Cat Track, and we just ask that you keep them under control and not let them get into the downhill traffic zone there, which is pretty easy to do. What's different about Mount Baker compared to some of the other ski areas is we do allow rope ducking in most of our areas, and it can be a little confusing, so I'd just like to touch on that for a little bit. On any of our permit operation boundaries, we allow people to leave the ski area at any point. You're not required to use a gate. All that we ask is that you stick to our backcountry policy. See if I can. And here's the rules detailing the backcountry policy. These are at the typical exit points from the ski area. There's three main exit points from the ski area, and we just ask that you have an avalanche transceiver and actually know how to use it, because you'd be surprised how many people don't have that much of the knowledge there. You've got to have a partner with you and a shovel. That's the gear that we usually check. Sometimes, we'll see people with all the equipment there, and we still know that they shouldn't be out there. They don't have a clue, and that's when we start asking the questions. Do you know where you're going? Do you actually know what you're doing, what the route you're going to take is? And we can turn away a surprising amount of people by just using that. They really don't know what's going on. And then we expect people to know the local avalanche conditions, what NWAC is saying for the day, what the snowpack is like out there. And with that, we can usually filter out people pretty well. But once you have all that stuff, you can leave our ski area anywhere you want. And then that's just the other side of the sign that we have there. The main thing that gets confusing at Mount Baker ski area is our closure policy, and this is what we use to keep people out of areas that we don't want to. So as Andrew was saying, their operational boundary will change depending on what's open or closed, especially early season. We maintain the same operational boundary the whole time, but if we are only running, say, out of the Heather Meadows side of the ski area, we'll just put a closure up blocking off the entire zones that we don't want you to go into. And patrol is pretty particular about that. If there's closed signs at Mount Baker, we really don't want you to go in there, and we're not going to be very happy if we have to chase people down into it. So at that point, if there's
We're
closed
about
signs,
out of time, Andy. So, but
go in there.
I just want to get this straight. I can duck a rope at Mount Baker. My 20-year-old self would just jump up for joy. And I actually did when I was 21 years old. For my 21st birthday, I went to Baker, road trip from Colorado. And I'm pretty sure I ducked ropes and had a great time. I did also find myself airing over giant pillows that I'm really lucky that I aired over them and didn't get smashed into the boulders.
Yeah,
Thanks a
good
lot,
job.
Andy. We gotta move on.
You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, that place is the real deal. We're gonna move on for now. I just want to touch really quickly about Mission Ridge. Josh from Mission Ridge couldn't be here today, but he did. They do have a policy up online, uphill and backcountry access policy, and they've done a pretty good job at outlining the uphill routes. He wanted to emphasize early season. They've got snowmaking. That's kind of one of the big differences at Mission Ridge is they have snowmaking out there, and these are high-pressured hoses. And you just don't want to ski over a high-pressured hose while it's pressured up. People have died in that job, snowmaking before. So it's the real deal. You know, look into it, talk to Ski Patrol before you go out there. And I think early season's just closed. I wanted to pass over to Conrad from the Cascade Backcountry Alliance to tell us a little bit about what he does.
Cool, thanks. So yeah, for those of you who haven't heard about us, which is probably most of the room, we're a little nonprofit that started last year, and this was our mission statement that we founded under. And I'll let you guys read that for yourselves, but really what that means is we had two main goals as an organization. The first one was to expand access and to kind of help spread people out. And then the second was to maintain access in some more well-traveled areas. And I would say we've had better luck at the second goal than the first thus far, which is not surprising. And a big part of that is ski areas being willing to come to the table for events like this or just chat with us and work with us. And basically fight an information battle. So Crystal, it's been great to build some digital resources for them, and we just want to put ourselves out there for any of the ski areas that we're here to help as much as we can to kind of spread the word. A lot of these policies are somewhat convoluted and maybe a little buried in the websites, and so we're just trying to aggregate that information and get it out there to folks as much as possible. And also, you know, have some accountability so ski areas can come to us as an uphill travel community with their concerns. So, you know, beyond just sort of this is a little bit, I think, probably preaching to the choir here in terms of the information that's being passed on. And so the next steps that we kind of see beyond this conversation would be not only each of you acting as sort of an ambassador as much as you can for the uphill travel community and kind of towing the line, but a little bit of a bigger picture thing would be some continued acceptance from the ski areas of uphill travelers as sort of part of the community and maybe part of their customer base as well. And I think particular shout out to Summit at Snoqualmie, Alpental, hosts VertFest, which is a great time. You know, they provide volunteer efforts to help set the VertFest course. It's a great community event. And so the more that ski areas become cognizant of uphill travelers as part of their community, I think the more resources will be available for a lot of these patrol folks who are often have plenty of stuff on their plate already and you know, don't necessarily need more things to do. So yeah, we're hopeful for the future. I think it's going well.
Thanks, Conrad. I was just going to ask you, so what are some things that we can do as a backcountry community to help lessen our impact when we're going out there and using the parking lots of ski areas and uphill traveling near there, or trying to access the backcountry from the shares?
Sure. Well, I think there's sort of like the obvious tangible things, which would be like carpool when you can, and be aware of where you can and cannot park, and you know, sort of simple things like that. But I think a bigger picture would be maybe ratcheting back the sense of entitlement a little bit. And I know that might be controversial, but there does seem to be a little bit of the attitude of like, it's our public land and we can do what we want. And just recognize that like these people are running big, hectic operations and you know, they're trying to do their jobs. A little bit of respect for that goes a long way, I think. And so as much as we can be good ambassadors in that respect, I think is great as uphill travelers. Yeah,
Awesome. And I looked at your website, and you've got a really good backcountry code of ethics on there that I think everybody should take a look at. I think it's pretty cool. It's a good job.
Yeah, definitely. We're not trying to preach too much, but check that out, and if we can spread the word on that, I think that's great.
Nice. Do we have a little bit more time for questions? All right. I'm just going to ask a few more. Are there any incidents or close calls that stand out to you guys that you would like to highlight to make sure that they're not repeated specifically?
Yeah, you know, I told the story when we were talking earlier today amongst us. You know, just recently within the last few years, coming down off of my route, pretty good slide looking at the results and seeing a skin track and dog tracks as well going into my slide debris of a good slide that we made, and no tracks coming out. So we had, well, you know, I just felt sick to my stomach because I thought we killed somebody. Delayed opening, running dogs through, everything else. Eventually, we cleared the scene and found some tracks higher up, and it's probably like a midnight skinner. But, that really stands out in my mind, and, that's what we're trying to avoid. So, it's kind of some of the reasons why these policies are in place and why we try and ask, for your guys' cooperation. Because, in the end, we want to try and provide as much as we can for everybody and yet not have anybody's day, be it ours or yours, end poorly. So that one stands out in my mind because it's pretty real and the potential is huge. So.
Awesome. Thanks. I know parking is a major issue in our state at the ski areas, and just a question, does anybody know how much a parking spot is worth at one of your ski areas? Like, I'm sure your economics guys probably calculate that. I know Stevens Pass has. I forgot the number, but that's why I'm asking.
More than Acapulco.
Yeah, are there any problem areas specifically that you guys didn't highlight in your presentation that you just want to let us know about?
I wouldn't say that we have problem areas at Stevens Pass, but it's more of problem times. And the time that we really have problems with are on avalanche control mornings. And we get it. We want to ski powder too, but that's why we work in the ski industry and we're out there to ski powder. But we absolutely cannot have uphill travel in our ski area while we're doing avalanche control work. And when we find, and it's patrollers that'll see a skinner from a distance, and all of a sudden, whatever patrollers are on the closest route, as soon as they can, they have to go make contact with that guest instead of doing avalanche control, right? And so, they're trying to do multiple laps to get their route done so that we can open the mountain for everyone that's standing there waiting in line to ski powder, and they're stopped having a discussion with somebody about why they cannot be traveling uphill in the ski area while explosives are going off all around in the background. And that has become a problem for us. Last season we had a couple of really burly weather days where we were on weather holds for avalanche control. Our patrollers literally couldn't ride the chairs up because it was too stormy, too windy. And so we were on a hold for starting avalanche control, and we had people that were just skinning, walking all over uphill in the ski area, and what was already a challenging morning for us was made even more challenging because we had to send all these extra resources to get people out of there so that we could actually start avalanche control work once we were able to get in place to do it.
I think that was the same day that we had the highway closed and people had to get dragged out of the parking lots because there was all of a sudden 19 inches of snow on their cars. I just wanted to ask one more quick question. Are there any recent changes that we should be aware of or that are coming down the pipe? I know we mentioned one with
Yes,
Alpental. We've got a
and
new.
Stevens has a couple, but not in terms of changing our policy, but just adding more opportunities for education about it. So hopefully we'll get a couple more blinky lights installed. It'd be nice to get one installed for the west side lots. And then we're also working to get an uphill travel hotline. So a phone number that you can call and get the up-to-date information on what's open, what's restricted. Yeah, those are and more signage alongside our blinky lights explaining our uphill travel policy so that there's no question.
All right, thanks so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time for Q&A from the audience, but now you know what these guys look like. So really, I think to wrap it all up, education is the future, and it goes both ways, you guys, from the ski areas themselves and then from the uphill backcountry communities ourselves. So I think in the future, we're going to try to have more information out there online, and then more information coming from the ski areas as well. So thanks so much for being with us, Conrad, and then all the ski areas.